before we get into kind of some of the nitty-gritty questions, what's driving the bus here? I mean, obviously, cybersecurity becomes more and more vulnerable. Your own team released a vulnerability intelligence report, a 2024 attack report that said you tracked more than 5,600 ransomware attacks between January 2023 and February 2024. I mean, is that really what it is, or are clients just absolutely asking for more and more protection?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's both. So the attacker landscape is changing. We're finding more and more nowadays that there's the attackers are actually using more zero-day exploits. So things that there's vulnerabilities not out there for today that a team can actually go patch. So attackers are ahead of the curve. So that is one trend. In addition, for the attackers that do get in and are not using those 0 days, they're actually executing on unmonitored assets, like we talked about, using common CVEs, common vulnerabilities that have been around for years. And so what you're seeing here is customers are not really, their organizations are not going to solve their problems by buying a new shiny tool. They're going to solve the majority of their problems by just getting back to those basics I talked about, making sure they have the right coverage up front, making sure they know how many identities are in their environment, what the posture is, making sure they have machines in there that are monitored by threats. And so it's this trend, I think, and this, the sentiment that we're hearing that, hey, I'm buying all this stuff, I'm spending a lot of money, we're out of budget, yet it's not really improving a whole lot. And so we've found that going back to the basics is just something that we've kind of missed. Like the industry has missed because we're all moving so fast. There's new attacks all the time. We're just trying to keep up, but it's like, no, that's important. And we do have to have the right protections and the defense and depth in play, but we got to get the basics right. Right. And so I think those are the trends that we're seeing that kind of point to why Rapid7 is investing so much in this.
Yeah. So I think this is fascinating because ultimately the demonstration you presented there, it's so obvious the simple changes that have to be made, and that there are so many potential vulnerabilities. I'm curious. Everybody at a certain level has something in place. People aren't typically acting derelict in their duties. They're doing the best they can. So when how do you help them integrate this into what they're already doing? I mean, how do you approach that when somebody says, you know what, I saw the demo and solutions review, and I'm curious to learn more about it, but we have all these other things in place. How do you talk to them about how this fits with their current portfolio of solutions?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're not derelict. They're working hard. So I think that's something to key to hit on. And we hear from these hardworking team members every day. They're struggling to keep an evolution of the attack surface. And so we need to make sure that they have the right tools and technology to be effective. And so immediately, because I go back to the first example, just that, the data silos and tooling sprawl that you saw, that's actually making the problem worse. We need these tools, but we're not, the way that we're designing them, the way that the industry is bringing them to the market is making the problem more difficult. And so we have to actually make that make sense for customers. We have to bring those tools together so they can start, this is the assets. These are the ones that I didn't know that were out there that my IT team deployed or someone else in the company deployed that I just couldn't see. These are the low-hanging fruit that we have to give our security teams visibility into. And so when you see that, when they see like, oh, hey, I have all these things that I can't make sense of, and all this different data that slows me down. I literally have to log into 10 different tools or 15 different tools every day. So when I talk to them, they're using a lot of spreadsheets. They're manually trying to fill this out, but they're out of date the next day. So they'll go through their VM tool. I'm going to grab all the thousands of assets, see which ones are missing, which are not. Then I'm going to go to my EDR and grab all the thousands of assets and identities. I'm going to put this in a spreadsheet with everything else. And it's literally killing their productivity. And so it really resonates because everything we do relies on data. So we got to make the data work for the customer, work for these organizations. And I think that's just something, once we have that, it'll make them so much more effective.
Well, so I know Rapid7 has over 11,000 customers. Well done, by the way. The question that we had was regarding smaller security teams. So, you guys obviously work with the biggest of the big, and the demonstration there was certainly with a fairly large attack environment. Uh, what about the surface management for smaller security teams? Where does this help out?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that number one, the app smaller companies, SMB, mid market, continue to have the same problem. It might be on a smaller scale, where they instead of paying for 50 tools like an enterprise would have, they may have 5 to 10 tools. But they still have these visibility gaps that are impacting their ability to be more productive, ultimately resulting in prohibiting them from reducing the risk quickly, as well as increasing their ability to target and monitor threats. And so, what we've done as we thought about this, especially in the research that we did early on for the acquisition, I myself, like I mentioned, interviewed 70 plus customers, and those were across the industry. They were enterprise as well as mid market and small. A lot of the SMB and mid market customers said, we actually cannot afford, we would love this, but we just can't afford a tool like this. And if I want to have an EASM tool to get my perimeter, guess what? I definitely can't afford both. I can't afford an internal attack surface tool and an external attack surface tool. And so our approach is we know these customers need this through lots of interviews. We actually decided let's bring it together in one solution, go to market, and let's do it at a more affordable price point, trying to undercut on it very competitively because, and by the way, this is with good reason, because they can't see today and they can't afford it to actually have a solution that allows them to see. So we want to be that person, that company that can solve that problem for them and then help them grow into the other Rapid7 solutions and offerings. And so that's kind of the idea. We want to help them grow their security program with us over the course of multiple years, but allowing them to start with attack surface visibility up front at a very affordable cost.
So as I look at that solution, I think to myself, okay, if I'm running it for the first time, I'm going to see a lot of things, and I'm going to slowly start to close those vulnerabilities. What's the protocol? I mean, where do you kind of see this playing out as an ongoing implementation? I mean, the first aha moment is something. But does the world change so rapidly on a continuous basis that you need to run this on some sort of regular protocol?
Yeah, so for one, it does. And it really depends on the nature of the business. Think about companies in hyper growth mode. And it could be any size, right? Just growing quickly. You could be hiring new people every day or every week. You could be deploying new applications in the cloud to service new customers every single day and multiple times a day or every week. And so that just kind of points to the fact that the attack surface does change. So I put it in 3 different buckets, Doug. I put it in step one is assessing your attack surface. Let's find all the things that we have, right? And let's assess the posture of those. Then the second bucket is, hey, now that I have these things, I want to monitor the attack surface. So this is where you incorporate other types of tools, threat detection and response, vulnerability management. And the third bucket is now I need to reduce my attack surface because I found everything, I'm monitoring what I have, and now let's get our vulnerability management IT teams working together to reduce that attack surface. And that becomes a cycle. So that each week you're actually, hey, what's my new attack surface look like? Because it does change depending on the organization. It could be day to day, it could be week to week, it could be month to month. So it's enough though. You have to keep up on top of it because an attacker can if you don't.
Well, I noticed on the documents section of the rapid7.com website for Exposure Command, there is a very neat onboarding experiences section at the bottom of the report, and it says very specifically implementation success package, cloud security, 2 half-day sessions, advanced command, exposure command, advanced 2 days. Talk a little bit about the onboarding experience with regard to bringing something like this on.
Yeah, and so for all our go-to-market solutions around Exposure Command, we provide all our customers with deployment and onboarding services. We do this because we want to make sure that they're set up for success. We don't want to just give them a tool, throw it over the fence. They paid for it, they have to figure it out for themselves. And so they will get to interact with their onboarding and deployment team who are technical resources that know these tools ins and out. So in the case of Exposure Command, they will deploy our surface command attack surface capabilities. We'll start auto ingesting anything they have from Rapid7. So get your vulnerabilities automatically. You'll get your threats. You'll get your cloud security, compute resources all in there. And then what we'll do, we'll say, hey, what are the top 5 tools that you trust in your environment? And those will be commonly we hear from customers, hey, Okta, right? I need for my identity source. Active Directory or Azure Directory Entra for my identity source. What is the EDR EPP tool that you're using, whether it's CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or Rapid7? Do you have a service? Do you have a CMD? Is it ServiceNow? Like, identify these key pieces of telemetry, get those set up through API connections. Once they have the APIs, it starts ingesting the data right away, and you'll have correlation within a couple hours. Then they can search their attack surface. So that's like the foundational piece there is like, hey, within a couple hours of plugging this in, you'll start to see your attack surface. 5 data sources, we believe personally, will actually start to give you visibility that you didn't have before. Now, the more data sources that you add on top of that, the more visibility that you get. And so we see as a production deployment, customers that reach 10 or 15 data sources tend to be the sweet spot.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.